Picture this. A guy gets vaporized by dark energy the second he opens a treasure chest, and wakes up with the eye of a god staring back at him from his own reflection. Picture this. A demon princess who's sworn to hate every human alive slides a ring onto her finger, courtesy of the guy she's supposed to be guarding, and somehow doesn't realize she just got proposed to. Picture this. A headmaster built to break minds for a living throws every ounce of killing pressure he's got at a room full of applicants. Everyone drops. Everyone except one guy, who stares back with murder in his own eyes and makes grown instructors take a step back. That's later. Right now, the guy behind all of it is just a broke novelist about to lose his mind, because he's about to wake up inside the exact villain he wrote to die. Let's rewind. Our guy, we'll just call him the author for now, is nobody special. No powers, no destiny, no cool backstory. He writes web novels for a living, and not even successful ones. His current project is a dark fantasy series about demons, empires, and a doomed side character everyone loves to hate, a cruel, scheming young lord named Adele, who exists in the story for one reason: to get executed in a spectacularly satisfying way a few chapters from now. That's the whole arc. Villain shows up, villain is awful, villain dies, readers cheer. Except the author never gets to publish those chapters. One second he's hunched over his keyboard, plotting out exactly how badly things are about to go for his own character. The next second, the world flips inside out, and he's not typing anymore. He's feeling cold stone under his knees, chains on his wrists, the smell of a prison cell that hasn't seen daylight in a while. He opens his eyes, and they're not his eyes. He looks down at hands that aren't his hands. Pale, elegant, the kind of hands that have never done a day of manual labor. There's a mirror bolted to the wall, because of course this cell has a mirror, and when he looks into it, he's staring at a face he's drawn in his own outline documents 100 times. Sharp features, cold expression, faint fox-like tilt to the eyes that his readers love to hate. He's Adele. Not playing Adele, not possessing Adele in some cool cinematic way. He is Adele now, stuck in the body of the villain he personally sentenced to death. And here's the fun part. He remembers the schedule. He wrote it. Execution. A matter of days away. No trial needed. No last-minute pardon coming. He made sure of that himself, because it made for a good chapter. So yeah, rough start. For a solid stretch, our guy just spirals, pacing the cell, running through everything he knows about this world, realizing in real time just how thoroughly screwed his own character is. Adele has no allies. Adele has no love interests. No secret power, no hidden lineage twist. Adele was written to be hated, then to die, then to be forgotten by chapter 12. Then something in the cell shifts. A folded note appears where there wasn't one a second ago, tucked under a loose stone, like it's been waiting. He unfolds it, and the handwriting isn't his. I know you're not really him. I've been watching. If you want to survive, I can help. Everything has a price. Turns out the real Adele, the original owner of this body, didn't just vanish when the author moved in. He's still around, some kind of lingering echo tied to the body itself, and he's got information, abilities, secrets about a power called position transfer that the author never even wrote down in detail because, again, this character wasn't supposed to matter past his death scene. The spirit's price isn't blood or sacrifice. It's simpler and weirder. Knowledge. Paid out through a notebook, one page at a time, one secret for one payment. Every ability the author unlocks costs him something written down in that book. It's transactional. It's cold. It's honestly the most reliable relationship he's got right now, and he leans into it hard, because the execution date isn't moving and neither is the guard schedule. Fast forward past the frantic cramming, past the sleepless nights inside a body that technically doesn't need sleep the way he thinks it does. The day comes. They come for him. Captain Feltz, the man assigned to make sure the Empire's least popular prisoner never sees another sunrise, shows up expecting a formality. Chain the villain, walk him to the block, collect the bounty on being the guy who ended a hated bloodline. Instead, he gets a fight he never signed up for. Adele barely has any real combat ability yet. What he does have is position transfer, still clunky, still limited, and a mind that spent years plotting exactly how professional killers think, because he wrote several of them into his own story. He can't outmuscle Feltz, so he doesn't try. He baits him, redirects him, swaps positions at the worst possible moment for the captain, and turns every advantage Feltz thinks he has into a setup for the next trick. The kicker! At one point, the notebook demands payment for a new ability mid-fight, and Adele, thinking faster than anyone in this situation has any right to, tricks Feltz into handing over his own prized weapon as unknowing collateral for the cost. Feltz doesn't even realize what just happened until it's too late. He loses his edge, loses his prisoner, and loses face in front of his own men, all in the same 5 minutes. Adele slips out through a crack in the Empire's control entirely, straight into the demon realm, a place humans aren't supposed to survive, let alone escape into on purpose. Feltz is left standing there, weapon gone, prisoner gone, looking like the world's least competent executioner. First real win. First real taste of, okay, maybe I don't just die on schedule. But the demon realm doesn't care that he just won one fight. It's not exactly a soft landing. He ends up stumbling into what the locals call a hidden domain. Think dungeon, but every single room is stacked with monsters that could flatten him without slowing down. No amount of clever talking gets him out of a fight with something that's pure claws and instinct. So he stops trying to fight fair entirely. This is where the real fun starts. Instead of grinding through monsters like some overpowered protagonist, Adele treats every room like a puzzle. He uses position transfer to swap places with debris, with barriers, with anything that isn't a living target, letting environmental hazards do the killing while he stays just out of reach. He baits monsters into each other. He collapses walkways behind him. He wins fights by making sure they never actually happen the way the monster expects. It's not clean. It's not glamorous. But room after room, he comes out alive when he really shouldn't, and it's honestly more satisfying watching him outthink his way through than it would be watching him just punch everything into paste. Then he finds the chest. You know the one. Sitting in the deepest room of the domain, practically glowing with main character energy, screaming, "Open me" in every language. He knows better than to trust free treasure. He opens it anyway, because what else is he supposed to do? Walk away? The second the lid cracks open, dark energy floods out and slams into him like a truck. It doesn't just hurt, it feels like dying. For a second, it basically is dying. Everything goes black, and when it comes back, something's different. He's got an eye that isn't quite human anymore, marked with power that has a name attached to it. The Eye of Superbia. Pride, given a physical form, sitting right there in his own skull. He doesn't know yet what it fully does. He just knows he survived something that should have ended him, and came out the other side stronger and stranger than before. That's enough for one rewind chunk of setup though, because the second he's out of that domain, the story's about to introduce the two people who end up mattering more than anyone else in his new life. A demon princess who wants him dead on principle, and her father, a man who could end him with a thought and instead decides to keep him around like a very dangerous pet. We'll get there. For now, just know this. The version of Adele stumbling out of that domain with a god's mark burned into his eye is not the same guy who woke up chained to a cell floor a few days ago. He's learning fast. He's surviving faster. And he has absolutely no idea that the biggest threats to his life from here on out aren't going to be monsters or assassins. They're going to be a demon girl with a grudge, her terrifying father, and his own inability to read a room when it matters most. Let's talk about Renee. She finds him, or rather, she's sent to find whoever's been causing chaos deep in demon territory, and instead of a monster or an invader, she runs into a human who talks his way out of getting gutted in under 30 seconds. That's not supposed to be possible. Humans in this world don't survive one-on-one with someone like her, let alone talk circles around her. Here's the trick Adele pulls, and it's a good one. He doesn't try to fight her, doesn't try to run. He convinces her, on the spot, with zero preparation, that he's actually her assigned bodyguard. Not some invader, not a threat. Just a guy doing his job badly enough to look suspicious, well enough to survive the conversation. It shouldn't work. Renee is sharp, she's dangerous, and she has every reason to hate humans down to her bones. We'll get to why in a second, but something about his confidence, or maybe his complete lack of the fear a normal person should have, throws her off just long enough for the lie to stick. Turns out her distrust of humans isn't random. She watched her own mother die because of them, years back, and that kind of thing doesn't just fade. She's spent her whole life since then assuming humans are either weapons or threats, nothing in between. So the fact that this particular human doesn't fit either box completely messes with her expectations. She brings him in instead of killing him, mostly out of suspicion more than trust, straight to her father. And her father is Kree. If Renee is dangerous, Kree is a different category of problem entirely. This is a man who could unmake Adele without breaking a sweat. And the second Adele's brought in front of him, Kree sees straight through the bodyguard story in about the time it takes to blink. He knows exactly what Adele did to fool his daughter. Here's the twist nobody sees coming, though. Instead of executing him on the spot, Kree decides he's more useful alive. Poisons him, sure, just to make sure Adele can't run or betray him without consequences. Forces him into service, but keeps him breathing. Adele spends every second around Kree absolutely terrified, and for good reason. This is a man who represents pure, casual, world-ending power. But fear doesn't stop Adele from doing what he does best, finding the crack in an impossible situation. Using position transfer in a way nobody, including Kree, sees coming, Adele quietly removes the poison from his own body. Not through some big dramatic showdown, through pure, careful precision, right under the nose of the one man in this world who should never be underestimated. Nobody notices. Nobody catches it. He just undoes the leash while pretending it's still around his neck. That's the kind of guy he's becoming. Not the strongest in the room. Never the strongest in the room, but the one who's already 3 steps ahead while everyone else thinks they're still holding the leash. And here's where things get even bigger, because instead of punishing Adele further once his usefulness becomes obvious, Kree does something wild. He hands over his own family's cultivation method. The kind of power that lets Adele draw mana directly from something called the demon god itself. That's not a minor favor. That's setting a human up with access to power that most demons would kill for. Why would Kree do that for someone he barely trusts? That's still an open question at this point in the story, but it's not hard to guess that a man like Kree doesn't do anything without a reason, and whatever that reason is, it's going to matter a lot later. With that power in his hands, Adele pushes further than anyone expects. Far enough that he ends up face to face with something way above his pay grade, the god of pride itself. A human, standing in front of an actual god, and somehow walking away not just alive, but marked. The mark of pride, layered right on top of the Eye of Superbia he already carries. 2 pieces of the same terrifying puzzle, both stamped onto a guy who started this story as a novelist with a keyboard and 0 combat experience. At this point, you'd think the story slows down to let him catch his breath. It doesn't, not for long. Adele and Renee end up teamed up properly for the first time against something called the Domain of the Undead, another one of those places built to grind unprepared people into dust. And this time it's not just Adele outthinking a room full of monsters solo, it's the 2 of them together, brains and power combined, clearing something that shouldn't be clearable, walking out the other side with treasure that's going to matter a whole lot down the line. Somewhere in all of that, working alongside her, watching her slowly stop treating him like a threat and start treating him like someone she actually trusts, Renee's guard starts coming down for real. Not all at once, little by little. She starts relying on him in ways she never planned on, and Adele, still mostly focused on just staying alive, barely notices the shift happening right in front of him. Which brings us to the ring. There's an item in play called the Eternal Full Moon Ring, something Adele picks up along the way without fully grasping what it represents in demon culture. To him, it's just an item, maybe useful, maybe not. To Renee, and to anyone else who understands demon customs, placing that ring on someone's finger is essentially a marriage vow. A serious, binding, meaningful gesture. Adele slides it onto her finger with all the ceremony of someone handing over spare change, completely unaware of what he's just done. Renee, on the other hand, absolutely knows what it means, and now has to sit with the fact that the human she's slowly falling for just accidentally proposed to her, without having the faintest clue he did it. It's funny. It's also going to be a problem later, because relationships built on one person knowing something huge and the other person being clueless never stay simple for long. From here, the story pushes towards something bigger. Seitan Academy. Renee, in the version of events Adele originally wrote, was destined to die there. That detail alone turns the academy from next step in the story into a ticking clock Adele can't ignore, even if he wanted to. They travel there together, through quieter stretches this time, actual conversations, actual trust building, actual moments where Adele has to reckon with the fact that the girl he's protecting isn't just a plot point to him anymore. Somewhere between the poison, the god, the ring, and the road to Seitan, this stopped being just about survival. Registration happens. The Academy pulls in its next class of applicants, including the heirs to what's called the 7 deadly sin families, a lineup of names and pedigrees that make it very clear Adele is stepping into a room full of people who were bred for exactly this kind of power. He's not one of them. He wasn't born into any of it. He's a novelist wearing a villain's skin, carrying a god's mark he barely understands, walking into a school built for monsters in human shape. And then comes the entrance exam, the same one from the very beginning of all this, the scene where everything started. The headmaster doesn't test applicants with written questions or physical trials first. He tests their minds, unleashing an aura of pure killing intent designed to break anyone not strong enough to handle it. Around Adele, other applicants, some of them from those same 7 deadly sin bloodlines, start dropping, collapsing under pressure that's meant to filter out anyone who doesn't belong. Adele doesn't drop. Instead, something in him answers back. The same killing intent, mirrored right back at the headmaster and every instructor watching, calm and controlled, and just as unsettling as anything they've put out. The room goes quiet in the way rooms go quiet, right before everyone realizes they misjudged someone badly. That's where we came in. That's the moment this whole story rewound from. A nobody novelist turned villain, turned survivor, turned something the instructors at the most dangerous academy in the Empire are suddenly reconsidering entirely. And it's only the beginning. The silence stretches out for a second too long before anyone in that examination hall remembers how to move. Instructors who've broken hundreds of applicants over the years, professionals who use killing intent like other people use a handshake, find themselves standing there, recalibrating everything they thought they knew about the kid in front of them. This isn't supposed to happen. Pressure like that is designed to be a filter, not a conversation. It goes one way, it doesn't get answered. Adele just answered it. He doesn't say a word, doesn't need to. The room already got the message loud and clear, and now every eye that matters is locked onto one unremarkable-looking applicant standing calm in a hall full of people who just hit the floor. Here's the thing, though. Even Adele doesn't fully know what he just tapped into. Somewhere between the Eye of Superbia carved into his own skull and the mark of pride burned in by an actual god, something in him reacted on instinct, not on plan. He didn't calculate that moment. He didn't run the numbers the way he usually does before doing something insane. His body just answered. And that's the part that should worry him more than it does. Around him, the other applicants are starting to pick themselves back up, dazed, humiliated, some of them furious at how easily they folded. And scattered among them are names that matter, the heirs to the 7 deadly sin families, the kind of bloodlines built specifically to produce monsters like this. Some of them shake it off fast, already sizing up the competition. Some clearly aren't used to being outshined by anybody, let alone someone nobody's ever heard of. Nobody here knows his name yet, not really. They just know that whoever this is, he didn't blink when he was supposed to shatter. That's a dangerous first impression to make in a school built entirely around power and pride. Some of these families are going to respect it, some of them are going to see it as a threat that needs handling before it grows into something bigger. And a few are probably already deciding he's a problem worth watching closely. Adele doesn't get the luxury of processing any of that yet, because that's exactly where this part of the story leaves him. Standing in that hall, the dust of collapsed applicants settling around him, instructors trading glances that say this year's intake just got a lot more complicated, and absolutely no clean answer yet on what happens next. That's the loop this part leaves open. What happens when the most dangerous school in the Empire decides the scariest kid in the room walked in wearing a fake name and a stolen face? We don't know yet. Nobody does. Not even Adele. So let's back up instead and look at everything that got him here, because it's worth understanding just how far this guy's come from a chained-up prisoner counting down the days to his own execution. Start with the abilities. Position transfer was a joke when he first got it. Barely functional, barely understood. Something the original Adele's lingering spirit handed over more as a starting point than an actual weapon. Back in that first escape from Captain Feltz, it was clunky, reactive, something he used because it was the only tool available, not because he'd mastered it. By the time he's crawling through the hidden domain, it's already evolved into something sharper. He's not just swapping positions to dodge, he's using it to redirect entire fights, to turn monsters into each other's problems, to make environments do the killing for him. And that's before the Eye of Superbia even entered the picture. The eye changes things. Even now, this early, It's clear that whatever it does goes beyond just looking intimidating. It reshapes how he fights, how he perceives threats, maybe how he processes the world around him in ways nobody's fully explained yet, including him. That's still a mystery being written in real time, and it's one of the bigger threads this story hasn't paid off. We don't know the full rules yet. We just know it cost him what felt like dying to get it, and that's usually a sign something's worth paying attention to. Then there's the mark of pride, which might be the single biggest wildcard in his current arsenal. A human walking away from a direct encounter with an actual god, marked instead of destroyed. That's not a small thing in a world where humans and demons don't exactly mix on friendly terms. What that mark actually does long-term, how far it can be pushed, what it means that a god decided he was worth marking instead of erasing, none of that's been spelled out. It's a promise sitting there, waiting to matter. And underneath all of it, the cultivation method Kree handed him is quietly doing the most dangerous work of all. Drawing mana straight from the demon god isn't some minor perk. That's the kind of power source that turns surprisingly capable human into problem the Empire eventually has to deal with. Kree didn't hand that over as a kindness. Whatever his real reasoning was, it set Adele on a growth curve most demons his age could never touch, let alone a human wearing borrowed skin. Put it all together. The eye, the mark, the cultivation, the ever-evolving position transfer, and you start to see why the headmaster's pressure test didn't work on him the way it worked on everyone else. He's not just a clever guy who got lucky a few times. He's been quietly stacking power most of this world doesn't know how to categorize yet. Now flip over to the other side of his life, because surviving isn't the only thing that's changed since that cell. Renee didn't trust him for a second when they met. Every instinct she had said human equals danger, full stop. And honestly, given what happened to her mother, that instinct earned its place. She wasn't wrong to be careful. She just didn't expect to run into someone who wouldn't fit cleanly into the box she'd built for humans over years of watching them from a distance, or worse. Watching her shift from suspicion to grudging respect to something warmer wasn't fast. And it wasn't clean either. It came in pieces, surviving the domain of the undead side by side, trusting his strategy even when it looked insane on paper, realizing somewhere along the way that he wasn't just useful, he was someone she actually wanted around. Adele, for his part, spent most of that time too focused on staying alive to notice what was happening to him in the process. He started genuinely worrying about her future, about the fate he knew was coming for her at Saitan, about keeping her safe from a story he technically wrote the ending to. That's not nothing. That's a guy who came into this world purely trying to survive, slowly turning into someone who cares whether somebody else survives too. Then of course there's the ring. Worth sitting with for a second, because it's honestly one of the funniest and most quietly devastating threads running through all of this. Adele put a ring on Renee's finger with zero understanding of what it meant. To him, it was an item. To her, and to every demon who understands their own customs, it was as good as a wedding vow. She knows exactly what happened. He has no idea. And that gap between what she knows and what he knows is going to keep creating exactly the kind of tension that makes this relationship interesting, instead of predictable. It's not a clean romance. It's messy, lopsided, occasionally hilarious, and quietly building towards something neither of them's ready to name yet. Meanwhile, Kree sits in the background of all of it like a loaded weapon nobody's pointed yet. Adele's relationship with him started as pure fear, then shifted into something closer to wary respect once the poison situation got handled without Kree ever noticing. But make no mistake, Kree gave Adele that cultivation method for a reason, and that reason hasn't been revealed. Maybe it's about Renee. Maybe it's about something bigger involving the demon god. Maybe Kree sees something in Adele that even Adele doesn't see in himself yet. That's one of the bigger open questions hanging over everything. Why would a man that powerful, that careful, hand game-changing power to a human he caught lying his way into his daughter's trust? Nobody does that by accident. Whatever Kree's actually playing at, it's bigger than anything shown so far. And then there's the original Adele, still lingering somewhere in the background of all this, still trading information for payment through that notebook, still treating the whole arrangement like a business transaction instead of a friendship. It's a strange kind of partnership. The ghost of the man whose body this is, quietly profiting off keeping his own replacement alive. Every secret costs something. Every ability comes with a price. And as the story goes on, the information gets scarcer, and the price gets steeper, which means at some point, That notebook's going to demand something Adele isn't ready to pay. All of that, the eye, the mark, the cultivation, the ghost, the ring, the girl slowly falling for a guy who has no idea he already sort of proposed to her, all of it collides right back into that examination hall, into the moment instructors who've seen everything found themselves rattled by a nobody who wasn't supposed to be able to answer back. Because here's the real question this story's been building toward this whole time. It's not just will Adele survive. He's already proven, over and over, in different ways, that survival isn't really the ceiling for him anymore. The real question is, what happens now that people are starting to notice? What happens when the Empire, the Academy, the other 7 deadly sin heirs, maybe even forces neither Renee nor Cree have mentioned yet, start looking at him and asking the same question those instructors are asking right now? Who is this guy, really? The honest answer, the one only the audience knows, is stranger than anyone in that hall could guess. He's not a hidden prodigy. He's not secretly royalty. He's a novelist who got thrown into the villain's body he wrote to die, armed with knowledge of a story that hasn't fully played out yet, making it up one impossible survival at a time. And every single person around him still thinks he's just Adele. That gap, between what the world sees and what's actually true, is the engine driving everything from here forward. Every conversation carries risk. Every new ally, every rival heir, every instructor who starts paying too much attention is one wrong assumption away from unraveling something that took an execution countdown, a demon realm escape, a face-to-face with a god, and a very confused romantic entanglement to build. So where does it go from here? Adele's walked into the most dangerous academy in the Empire, carrying secrets big enough to get him killed twice over, next to a girl he doesn't realize he's essentially married, under the watch of a man whose real motives are still a mystery, marked by a god, armed with power drawn from a source most people would kill just to touch. The instructors already know something's different about him. The other heirs are already watching, and somewhere out there the story he wrote, the one where this exact character was supposed to be long dead by now, keeps rewriting itself in real time, with no guarantee the ending stays anywhere close to what he originally planned. That's where we leave it. Hall full of shaken applicants, instructors reconsidering everything, a girl standing near him who trusts him more than she probably should, and a guy in the middle of it all who came into this world just trying to survive a death sentence, and somehow ended up rewriting his own story instead. What happens next, when the Academy actually starts, is a whole different fight, and it's coming. The hall's still buzzing when the instructors finally call a break in testing, and that break is where the real fallout starts. Not in dramatic declarations, but in the small stuff. The kind of tension you feel in a room before anyone says anything out loud. Word travels fast among the 7 deadly sin heirs. It has to. These are families that have spent generations clawing for status, watching each other, measuring every rival kid against their own. And now there's a name nobody expected, sitting somewhere near the top of that mental ranking. A name that wasn't supposed to be a threat 5 minutes ago. Some of them brush it off. Pride does that. Makes you assume the fluke was a fluke, that whoever just matched the headmaster's pressure got lucky, that it won't happen twice. Others aren't so quick to dismiss it. The sharper ones in that room clock exactly what just happened and file it away as something worth watching. Not everyone here got where they are by underestimating people twice. Adele doesn't know their names yet. Not really. Not in any way that matters. He knows they're dangerous by birthright, bred into power the way he's had to claw his way into it one desperate trick at a time. That's a different kind of scary than a monster in a dungeon. Monsters just want to kill you. People raise their whole lives to compete for status, want to understand you first, figure out where you fit, whether you're a rival, or a tool, or a problem to remove quietly, before it becomes a bigger one. He doesn't get time to sit with that thought for long, though, because Renee's right there beside him, and her reaction is the one that actually matters to him. She watched the whole thing happen, watched him answer killing intent with killing intent like it was nothing, and if you'd asked her a few weeks ago whether a human was capable of something like that, she'd have laughed you out of the room. Now she's just quiet, watching him with an expression that's part confusion, part something warmer she probably hasn't fully named yet. This is the girl who grew up assuming humans were either weapons or threats. No middle ground. Watching her own mother die because of exactly that assumption isn't the kind of thing you get over by being told it's fine. It's the kind of wound that reshapes how you see an entire species. And here's a human standing next to her who keeps refusing to be either category. Not a weapon she has to wield carefully. Not a threat she has to neutralize. Just someone who keeps showing up, keeps surviving, keeps making her reconsider things she thought were settled a long time ago. That's the quiet emotional core sitting underneath all the exam drama and power reveals. A girl slowly letting go of a fear she's carried since she was young enough that it should have calcified into something permanent. It hasn't. Not entirely. Not since him. And if you want to know how deep that guardedness used to run, you don't have to look any further than what Adele learned early on about her past. Her mother didn't die in some abstract political conflict. She died in front of Renee, at human hands, at an age where that kind of thing doesn't just leave a scar. It becomes the lens you see the entire world through afterward. Every human Renee's met since then has had to fight uphill against that memory before she'd even consider trusting them. Adele's the first one who didn't have to fight uphill the whole way. Somewhere in surviving alongside her, in choosing to look out for her future even knowing what he knows about how her story was originally supposed to end, he became the exception to a rule she built to protect herself. That's not nothing. That's arguably the most important thing that's happened to either of them so far, buried underneath all the monster fights and god encounters and poison plots. Speaking of things buried underneath the action, there's a piece of this story that doesn't get talked about enough, and it's worth pausing on before we move forward. Adele's guilt. Remember, this isn't just a guy who got dropped into a random fantasy world. He wrote this world. He wrote the tragedies in it. Somewhere in his journey through the demon realm, he runs into the aftermath of a storyline he authored himself. A necromancer, undead soldiers, a whole tragic arc he crafted purely because it made for compelling chapters. Dramatic irony is one thing when it's about hiding his identity. It's a whole different weight when it's about realizing the suffering scattered across this world exists because he decided it should, back when none of it felt real to him. That's a strange kind of grief to carry. Not guilt over something he did by accident, guilt over something he did on purpose, for entertainment, before he understood that these weren't just characters on a page anymore. They were people. The undead soldiers he wrote as set dressing for a sad subplot actually lived, actually suffered, actually died, exactly the way he planned it out on a keyboard in his old life. He doesn't get to fix that. Can't undo chapters that already happened before he arrived. But it's the kind of realization that quietly reshapes how he treats everyone else going forward, Renee included. If he wrote tragedy into people's lives without a second thought once, maybe the guy staring down her original fate at Seitan Academy owes it to himself, and to her, to make sure this time the ending's different. That's the through line connecting a lot of what looks like separate plot threads. It's not just about surviving anymore. It's about a guy who used to treat this world as fiction, learning in real time exactly how much that fiction actually cost the people living in it, and deciding, quietly, without ever announcing it out loud, that he's going to spend his second chance trying to owe less of a debt than he started with. Now, contrast all that heaviness with Cree, because that relationship carries its own quieter warmth, buried under layers of fear and utility. Cree doesn't do warm. Cree doesn't do soft. Everything about him reads as a man who could end anyone in the room without changing his expression, and for a long stretch, that's exactly how Adele experiences him, as a walking threat he has to carefully manage, never provoke, never disappoint. But watch closely, and there's something else going on underneath that. A man like Cree, cold as he presents, still quietly prepares his own daughter for the dangers waiting at Seitan Academy, despite barely showing affection on the surface. That's not the behavior of someone who doesn't care. That's the behavior of someone who cares in the only language he knows how to speak. Preparation, protection, positioning the people around him for survival instead of saying it out loud. Which maybe explains, at least partially, why he handed Adele that cultivation method instead of just discarding him once his usefulness as a servant was established. Maybe Cree saw someone who could keep his daughter alive where the original story had her dying. Maybe he saw the same shift in her that the audience sees, the guarded girl slowly trusting someone for the first time in years, and decided that was worth investing in, even if it meant empowering a human he still doesn't fully trust. That's speculation. The full reasoning hasn't been laid out yet. But it fits the pattern. A father who doesn't express love directly, expressing it instead through the currency he actually has: power, protection, positioning. So here's where all of these threads sit as we head toward the next stretch of the story. Adele's walking into Seitan Academy carrying secrets that could get him killed if exposed, next to a girl who trusts him more than she's trusted any human in years, backed by a man whose motives are still a mystery wrapped in cold utility, marked by things, an eye, a god's blessing, that even he doesn't fully understand yet. And every single thread is still open. The Eye of Superbia hasn't shown its full range. The mark of pride hasn't been tested against anything that actually matters. The notebook's price keeps climbing as the original Adele's information gets scarcer, which means at some point, that ghost is going to demand something that actually hurts to pay. And somewhere in the shadows of all of this, the 6 noble families who set the original tragedy in motion haven't faced a single moment of payback yet, which means somewhere down the line, that's still coming. None of it's resolved, all of it's loaded. And that's really the shape of this whole story so far, isn't it? Every win costs something. Every relief comes wrapped around a bigger problem waiting just behind it. Adele hasn't had a single stretch of real safety since he woke up in that cell. Just smaller dangers replaced by bigger ones, smaller victories building toward bigger stakes, over and over, escalating every single time it looks like he might finally get to breathe. That's exactly why it works. Nobody watching this story gets to relax for long, because neither does he. The break ends, and testing moves into its next phase, and this is where things start splitting the room into 2 very different categories. Applicants who are suddenly recalculating their odds, and applicants who still haven't figured out yet that they should be worried. Some of the 7 deadly sin heirs approach it exactly how you'd expect from people bred for exactly this moment. They watch Adele the way predators watch something they haven't decided is prey or competition yet. No direct confrontation. Not here, not with instructors circling and grading every reaction. Just careful, measured attention. The kind that says I'm filing this away for later. Renee stays close, and it's not just protectiveness at this point, though there's plenty of that too. It's something closer to solidarity. She's spent her whole life being underestimated by humans and overestimated by demons in equal measure, and now she's watching someone else get sized up by a room full of people who don't actually understand what they're looking at. There's a kind of camaraderie in that. 2 people who don't fit the boxes everyone keeps trying to put them in, standing next to each other in a room full of bloodline politics neither of them asked to be part of. Adele, for his part, does what he's done since the moment he woke up in that cell, reads the room, plays it careful, gives away as little as possible. He didn't survive an assassination, a demon realm, a god, and a poisoning by being loud about what he knows. He's not about to start now, in a school built entirely around figuring out who's actually worth fearing. But something's different this time, and it's worth sitting with. Every other danger he's faced so far has had a clear shape, a captain with a blade, a monster in a domain, a god who could end him with a thought. This is the first time the danger is social, political. The kind of threat that doesn't come at you with a weapon, it comes at you with rumors, alliances, and slow, patient maneuvering from people who've been playing this exact game since birth. That's a fight position transfer can't solve. That's a fight the Eye of Superbia probably can't solve either. This is the first arena where being the guy who wrote the story, who knows how certain threads are supposed to play out, might actually matter more than any power he's picked up along the way. And that's exactly the kind of tension this story keeps building toward. Not just, can Adele survive the next monster, but can Adele survive a world that's starting to actually pay attention to him? Every victory so far has made him stronger. It's also made him more visible, and in a place like Saitan Academy, visibility is its own kind of danger. Which brings us to where this part of the story has to leave off, because the deeper fallout, the actual first moves from the 7 deadly sin heirs, the next stage of whatever Kree's really planning, and the true shape of what the Eye and the Mark can actually do once pushed, none of that's played out yet. It's all sitting right on the edge, loaded and waiting. What we know is this. A novelist who should be dead by now is standing in the middle of the most dangerous school in the Empire, next to a girl who was never supposed to trust a human again, under the quiet watch of a man whose real plan nobody's seen yet, carrying power that even gods took notice of. And the story he wrote, the one where all of this ended in an execution days after it began, doesn't look anything like the one he's actually living anymore. That's where we stop for now. What happens once the Academy actually starts testing him for real? That's next.